Hello YouTube, we are back today with another deck profile discussion video for you all. Today we're going to be going over my updated yellow vaccine list moving into the rest of the format. As we've said in previous videos, for me, vaccine is just a really fun deck in the sense that it is really what you want to make of it. You can choose to run it in so many different ways. We've seen even on our channel itself, right? So many different players run varying builds of vaccine. Like Bill has his own build, I have my own build, Gabe has his own, TJ had his own. So it is very player expressive in my opinion. The core pieces of the deck may be sort of recurrent staples, or they're gonna be the same core sets. But overall, like the play style, your tech choices, the way you even pilot the deck, there's so many different things that you can do, and I feel like it's really just something really cool to see, sort of that player expressiveness come out into play. So what I'm going to try to do today is kind of walk you through my list, talk about my own tech choices, and hopefully as we go over the cards, you'll start to see like sort of what my play style is, how I like to pilot the deck, and so forth. Before we jump into the meat of the video, a couple of administrative things to talk about. First, if you haven't liked and subscribed to our channel, please consider doing so. We just really would appreciate all the support. The channel's been growing a whole lot lately, and anything that you guys can do to help us out would be greatly appreciated. It really does help the algorithm and just helps our channel grow, so we can keep providing you guys with the content that you all enjoy. Second of all, please feel free to check out our socials, which will be linked in the link tree in the video description down below. It'll include our Twitter, our Instagram, our Discord, as well as our YouTube and TCG player affiliates. The Discord's been a great place recently. It's been really fun getting to see a lot of folks come in from all over the world, right? And just like talk Digimon, shoot the shit, talk about, spoilers, deck building, and really everything in between. So it's really been awesome getting to know everybody. It's been awesome seeing different faces and different people like just interacting with each other. So it's been really awesome just from a community perspective. So please feel free to check them out. Like I said, we'll be linked in the video description down below. So thank you everybody once again, and without further ado, let's start talking yellow vaccine. Alrighty guys, so let's start off with the Digitama. We're going to be running 5 eggs here. Yellow Vax in particular can be a very grindy deck, depending on sort of the matchup and sort of your playstyle. So I think 5 eggs is a safe bet. We're going to be running 4 of the BT-15 Charomon, which is great to give your stacks jamming. You're really manipulating your security a lot, putting stuff in and bringing stuff out. So it's very easy to proc that jamming effect to keep your bodies on board, which now paired with the barrier mechanic makes your bodies even more sort of annoying to deal with. And then the last egg we're going to run is the BT-15 Tokomon, or BT-14 Tokomon, pardon me. For me, this is probably the next best egg. I don't think it's like an amazing egg per se, particularly with your recovery. Sometimes you do run low on just like your deck in general. So sometimes Tokomon, I feel like running too much of it can be a detriment to you. But I think in the long run, like if you're looking for a 5th egg, that is probably your best egg. And it does help with consistency at times. So we'll definitely take that where we can. So moving on to the rookies, we do run 4 of the BT-14 Patamon, 4 BT-15 Salamon, and 2 BT-13 Kudamon. BT-14 Patamon, for anybody who's even just like thought about yellow vaccine, right? It is the engine that makes the deck go. BT-14 Patamon gives you so much gas as a yellow vaccine player, where it allows you to digivolve for free, it manipulates your security, and overall just sort of really adds to your game plan. A lot of effects, whether it's inheritable or Digimon effects, proc when things are either added or removed from security. This card does both, and a lot of your DP reduction shenanigans really pop off, again, with Patamon. So you have to run it out of 4 of. Yes, it does feel bad when that man whiffs, but at the same time, you can't run the deck without it. So 4 is definitely a must of. BT-15 Salamon, I think is okay. I think at the start of main effect can be sometimes helpful depending on your board state. Being able to kind of choose to add or remove from security, again, as you kind of keep in mind what inheritables you have on board and what tamers you have on board, sometimes can come up. There have been definitely times where I'm like, ooh, if I remove this card, I can DP neg here, I can gain memory here, and I can start stringing along some plays. So I think Salamon does offer you a little bit of that sort of like escape route in a sense when you push up from raising. The inheritable to neg an additional 2k DP can also come up sometimes, depending on, again, how your board is set up and what plays you're running. So I think it's a solid second option as a rookie. And then to round out, like I said, the rookies, the BT-15 Kudamon really is just there for searching consistency. The DP inheritable can come up at times, but you're really using it for that searching capability. And then moving on to the level 4s, we do run 4 of the BT-14 Secret Angemon, 3 of the BT-15 Gatomon, and 3 of Starter Deck 10 Gatomon, the one from the Mastamon starter deck. BT-14 Angemon is really self-explanatory at this point. It's a really, really good card and does a whole lot of things. It can really mess up certain matchups like Machine Dramon, where you're able to just like remove cards very easily off of its when attacking on deletion effect. On top of the on deletion effect, being able to hatch and have something ready to go in raising helps you with turbo and tempo. Being able to add to security on deletion as well. Again, procs a lot of effects, tamer effects, and heritable effects. So I think a very, very versatile card and definitely a 4 of. BT-15 Gatomon, in my opinion, gets better every time I really think about it. At first, when the card came out, I was really just kind of shitting on it, for lack of a better way of putting it. I was really just railing it for how mid it was in at first impression. But then as I've tested more with it, as I've seen people run it against me as well, it's getting better and better. I think Barrier also is a mechanic that I didn't really love at first, but now has become a lot more, I think, viable with these new effects and new support pieces that we've gotten. Being able to manipulate, again, your memory and your DP reduction shenanigans is great. And also just being able to keep your body on board, particularly keeping a level 4 on board, I think is huge, because you run so many level 5 ace cards that are arguably one of the stronger level 5 ace cards in the game. Your opponent really has to play around those ace cards. So if you can keep your level 4s on board, they really have to think twice before making a play, because that could easily bite them in the butt if they don't think about it and just go ahead and do what they want to do. So I think Barrier, particularly for a level 4, is great, and being able to gain memory every time something is removed is also really, really good. I think Starter Deck 10 Gatomon is also really good, because paired with one of the top ends that I'm running in Mitamamon, being able to play this guy, proc its on-play effect to just keep digging and searching for your pieces is really, really nice. If it ends up living or you have it back in raising, being able to digivolve into a level 5, whether it's an ace card or another level 5 that has Angelin traits, for a cost of 1, also really just helps your tempo and helps your aggression. Getting into your top end 1 turn earlier can be the difference. And with the top ends that we're running and, that we'll be going over shortly, I think really, really good in that aspect. So that's why I really like, Starter Deck Gatomon in this deck. You may note that I'm not running the Bulkmon package. A lot of folks will say, well, Bulkmon 2 checks jamming is really, really nice. I totally agree. But this is where some of that player expressiveness comes into play. I like the Starter Deck Gatomon for that, ability to get into my top end faster. There are definitely folks who would rather, Mitama, play out a Bulkmon. If you have the security condition met to get 2 checks, just swing 2 checks, hope it lives, and get some early aggression in. I think both are very viable. I just personally like the Starter Deck Gatomon better. Moving on to the level 5s, we do run 3 Magna Angemon Ace from BT-14, 3 of the Angemon Ace from BT-15, and 2 Magna Angemons from EX1. I have thought about running a 1-to-1 split of EX1 Magna Angemon and EX1 Angemon. I'll talk about those 2 choices in a little bit, but let's talk about the ace cards first, right? I think a majority of Yellow Vaccine players will be running at least 6 of the level 5 the level 5 ace cards, just because they're really, really strong cards, right? Magna Angemon being able to recover and help with DP reduction is huge. Angemon doing the opposite and removing, but also potentially recovering if you have 3 or less security cards is also really nice for, again, DP reduction, pairing with like Seraphimon or Venusmon, whatever it may be. You're able to do a whole lot of removal and control with these ace cards, which makes them really, really strong. For me, the high 8 aces does scare me a little bit, because if all my level 5s are aces, if my stack gets removed, it just feels really, really bad. And that's, I think, one of the bigger detriments to running Yellow Vaccine now in this meta is that there's so many cards that have removal, deletion, source strip. You know, BT-15 with Imperial Dramon has a lot of source strip coming up, and being able to just remove an ace from the stack can really hurt you, because now you're just giving your opponent 3 free memory, which is essentially like a whole nother turn to do a whole lot of different things, which again, for me and my playstyle, scares me a little bit. Some people don't really care, and that's fine, but that's why I'm choosing to run just the 6, because any more than that, I feel like I give my opponent a lot more advantage. But like I said, like really, really strong cards. DP reduction is one of the strongest forms of removal in today's game right now, especially with armors going to be being a very prevalent deck that's going to be run, whether it's sort of V armors or rapid armors in BT-16. DP reduction is one of those mechanics that will kind of carry over, right? So they can't armor purge a DP reduction. So I think really, really good, and helps you be very versatile with your removal plays. The 2 EX1 Magna Angemon, really just used for the inheritable. Being able to gain an extra memory going into Seraphi, I think is huge. One reason I feel like I'm cutting down on it is that I'm not running 4 Seraphi anymore. I'm running just 2, as we'll talk about in a little bit. So sometimes Magna Angie doesn't really do a whole lot from an inheritable standpoint unless you have a lot of TKs and your stack lives. EX1 Angemon, I think it's interesting in the sense that, you know, when attacking, you can neg security DP, and you can also neg your opponent a certain amount of DP. So depending on how you play out your plays, like, it can be very relevant in getting some extra removal in, which is why I'm considering throwing her in there. But my initial build had just 2 Magna Angemons. And that'll do it for your level 5s. Moving on to the level 6s, we do run a little bit of a toolboxy variant for our level 6 spread. We start off with 2 BT-10 Venusmon, 2 BT-14 Seraphimon, and 2 EX5 Mitamamon. Venusmon, I think, is still a huge, huge floodgate card, and a really, really good one at that. I think moving into BT-16, you're going to see a whole lot of Venusmon coming back into play, because Venus as a floodgate for proccing when digivolving effects slows so many decks down, whether it's a turn or even multiple turns at that. Being able to go into it, neg check the board, and then just say, look, you can't really do anything, sometimes forces people to just stay in the back and have a dead turn, right? And that may be all you need to go for game or really establish another controlling presence on sort of the overall game state, right? So I think Venus is going to be really good. Being able to stop Magna X from proccing when digivolving effects, or other armor pieces from doing when digivolving effects, I think is going to be also really, really huge. Not just going up against Magna, but also for folks who maybe even be considering the mirror, right? Vaccine armors is a thing and a legitimate scary deck. So don't be surprised to be running into Venus against armor decks as well. So I think definitely a card to be wary of. BT-14 Seraphimon, I think, is a little bit self-explanatory in the sense that it recovers, it does DP reduction shenanigans, and it gives you some early aggression too. I prefer to go into Seraphi earlier on if I can help it, just because, like I said, being able to get into a top end, if it has barrier in its inheritables, even better, right? Because you're able to go into it, you're recovering 1, you're potentially DP negging something, and you're swinging for 2 checks jamming, I think is really, really nice. So again, a better early end top end, because it just helps you push that early aggression, and even if your opponent gets rid of it, right? 1, you may have barrier, 2, that's okay, you can easily rebuild with how this deck likes to run. So I do run it at a 2 of, I think it's helpful for that aspect. And then the 2 Mitamamon, I think it's more of a late game top end. Being able to stifle your opponent when you're both are down to like 1 or 2 security each, or you're down to like 0 security and they have just like 2 or 3, you can essentially go into Mitamamon and say, look, the whole board has neg 2 checks. And it really forces them to either get rid of it or forces them to work around it. Another really annoying thing that you can do is go into an EX5 Mitamamon with a Venusmon already established, because now that says, look, y'all can't do anything, because even if you are able to raise and get more security checks. Well, Venusmon says no, your security stuff, your digivolving stuff doesn't proc, you know, and even if you don't do anything, you just raise, you can't do any digivolving effects. You can't swing into Venus just because Tamamon gives you that blanket neg check again. So it's essentially like if you were to prolong Venusmon's effect, if you have those two on board. So really, really, really good. And on top of that, just being able to say, look, I'm going to ditch security. I'm going to play out a level 4 with rush and swing for an additional check is great aggression too, right? So I think really, really nice with, especially paired with barrier, really makes your opponent get stuck in a difficult spot, because the more aggressive they get, the more they dig themselves in a hole, which can be detrimental to them in the long run. So I think, you know, these top ends really focus on controlling board state, and then the Seraphi really just focuses on early aggression. And then the last Digimon that we're going to run is one of the EX5 Ruin mode. It's expensive for a reason. It's a really good card, and being able to kind of control and stifle your opponent with your top ends, and then when you're ready to kind of just say, look, I'm gonna suffocate you even more, go Ruin mode to prolong yourself another turn, I think is huge. You know, especially with armors and Imperial Dramon being going to be like really good decks moving forward. Being able to give your opponent a blanket minus 5k DP on their field really shuts them down, not just for a turn, but potentially for 2 turns as well. So I think Ruin mode is definitely a must. I could see a world where you want 2 of them and not just 1, but I think 1 I see consistently enough, and if I time it the right way, it does what it needs to do. Moving into the options, we do run 2 BT-10 Lonky. Again, in my opinion, just one of the best removal cards in the game. You really want security bombs now in this meta and in the BT-16 meta, and if you're running yellow and you have access to, like I said, one of the best removal cards in this game, I think you have to find ways to run it. So that's why I snuck it in as a 2 of. And with how easily you're manipulating security, whether it's by addition or subtraction, getting to that sweet spot of 3 is a really easy condition to meet, which is why I think you just run it at, you know, you can run it at a 2 of and feel very comfortable with it. Next, we do run 3 Revelation of Light from BT-15, which again, I decided to throw in there because of the Karis that I'm running, that we'll be talking about in a little bit. At times, I definitely see it, you know, before all you sort of veteran Yellow Vaccine players come at me for saying like, no emissary, what the hell, man, what are you doing? I hear you. I hear you 100%. But I do want to try how Revelation of Light works, particularly with how I'm playing this deck. It's an annoying card to hit out of security, and again, with how you can manipulate it by putting it on top, removing it, and proccing effects, I think you can do a whole lot with this card. And the effect to just play out a body, again, a level 4 body, which threatens an ace play for your opponent next turn, is also really, really good. So I'm trying this at a 3 of. Again, is there a world where I see myself going back to Emissary? 100%. 100%. But I do feel like Revelation, for what it's worth and how this deck is set up, can do a whole lot of damage. And I've had a lot of good success with it. And I do like it at a 3 of. So yeah, you know, that'll do it for our options. Moving on to the Tamers, like I said, we do run BT4 Kari. We do run it at a 4 of. And then we run 2 BT1 TK and 4 BT14 TK. So talking about BT4 Kari, you know, it does help provide the tax if your opponent were to hit into security. We see it a lot in Seccon decks, and we see it a lot in purple decks as well. But I feel like here with Revelation, it pairs very, very nicely. And with Barrier too, this card can do a whole lot of damage, right? Where you can essentially just, during your turn, you can Angelomon Ace, you can choose to remove a card from security, you can tap Kari, gain however much memory you want, recover, which can at times proc BT14 TK, as well as Patamon Inheritable, so you can really skyrocket your memory gain to a whole lot here. And if you choose to say, look, I don't want to tap it, I just want to tax my opponent, that's also a very viable option too, right? So I think a very flexible card, and one that synergizes very, very well with this particular build for Yellow Vaccine. And being a 3-drop is just great too, you know. BT1 TK, I really use 1 for memory setter purposes, and 2, being able to just cycle through, look through with security, and pick out what you need or pick up a missing piece because we aren't running those training cards or those yellow mem boosts. This sort of acts as an additional consistency piece. So I do like BT1 TK. The removal part from security also will proc not just Kari, but your Kyaromans, some of your DP reduction shenanigans. So I do like TK for that regard. And then BT-14 TK, obviously, just paired with Patamon, does so much. A 3-cost Tamer to really just turbo up your memory efficiency and ramp your memory during your turn, I think is invaluable. Again, it's also a great consistency piece for Patamon, because if you don't want to gamble and you have a level 4 in hand, just slip a level 4 into the bottom, take top card of security, and your Patamon play is set up perfectly next turn, right? So I think BT-14 TK is definitely a must-have in this deck on top of the Patamon play, you know? And that does wrap up the deck, guys. So like I said before, Vaccine for me is just a really strong deck with a lot of player expressiveness that can come into it. There's a lot of ways you can pilot the deck, a lot of ways that you can build your deck to how you want to play it and how you want to express yourself, which I think is really, really awesome. We've seen a lot of players in our own locals, right, pilot it different ways. We've seen Ante pilot it a very aggressive manner. We've seen Bill pilot a more kind of control, recovery-oriented build. I feel like my deck is a little bit in between, where I kind of like to do both, and I have elements of both in play that I can kind of utilize in different scenarios. And we've seen different YouTubers run different builds as well, right? You know, shout out to the homie DigiDread, because he's got a very interesting and very good yellow vaccine build that he's been cooking around with. Mario has his own sort of build, love him or hate him. You know, he's got his own build for it. And Jadobi, I think, recently had one that he took to Ulti Cup as well. So a lot of different YouTubers are running their own builds of yellow vaccine, which I think is just really cool to see. And it's really fun to just play test and theory craft this deck. So if you guys have any critiques or suggestions for my build, feel free to drop a comment in the comment section below, or feel free to join the Discord or hit me up on Discord. I'm happy to kind of shoot the shit with you guys and talk about this deck, because I truly do have a lot of fun playing and testing with this deck. I do think it does struggle at times against matchups like Mirage, matchups that do a lot of deletion, a lot of de-digivolving, because like I said, those ace cards really can hurt you, but also help you at the same time. So it's like a double-edged sword. But regardless, it's really, really fun for me. I love this deck, and I'm going to keep trying to tinker with it moving forward. Thank you guys for tuning in. We really appreciate all the support, and hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Bye, guys.